It is breakfast time for dogs, and I'm going to try to finish this story. The half-skinned steer. All right, let's see. Easy, easy. There you go. Yeah, there you go. Oscar. Good boy. And these guys want dog food, but cracked corn is a better choice. So from where we left off. So what? Rollo had said to the old man's girlfriend. What about that Mr. Tin Head? Looking at her, not just her face, but up and down, eyes moving over her like an iron over a shirt. And the old man in his mailman sweater and lopsided hat, tasting his Everclear, and not noticing or not caring, getting up every now and then to lurch onto the porch and water the weeds. When he left the room, the tension ebbed, and they were the only ordinary people to whom nothing happened. Rollo looked away from the woman, leaned down to scratch the dog's ears, saying, "Snarly yow snapper," and the woman brought a dish to the sink and ran water in it, yawning. "Well, well," she said, tossing her braids back. "Every year, Tin Head butchers one of his steers. And that's what they'd eat all winter long. Boiled, fried, smoked, fricasseed, burned, and raw. So one time he's out there by the barn and he hits the steer, a good one with the axe, and it drops stunned down. He ties up the back legs, hoists it up, and sticks it. They want the leftovers. And by the way, this story turns a bit graphic. If you don't care for that kind of thing, maybe go watch something else, some cat videos for a while, and then come back. Hoists it up and sticks it. Shoves the tub under to catch the blood. When it's bled out pretty good, he lets it down, starts skinning it. Starts with the head, cuts back on the pole, down past the eyes to the nose, peels the hide back. He don't cut the head off, but keeps on skinning. Dew claws to hock up the inside of the thigh and then to the cod and down the middle of the belly to the brisket to the tail. Now he's ready to start siding, working the tough old skin off, but siding is hard work. The old man nodded. And he gets the hide off about halfway, starts thinking about dinner. So he leaves the steer, half skinned there on the ground, and he goes into the kitchen. But first he cuts out the tongue, which is his favorite dish of all, cooked up and eat cold with Mrs. Tin Head's mustard in a forget-me-not teacup. Sets it on the ground and goes to dinner. Dinner's chicken and dumplings. One of them changed color chickens, started out white and ended up blue. Yes, sir, blue as your old daddy's eyes. She was a total liar. The old man's eyes were murk brown. Onto the high plains sifted the fine snow, delicately clouding the air, a rare dust. Beautiful, he thought, silk gauze. But there was muscle in the wind, rocking the heavy car, a great pulsing artery of the jet stream swooping down from the sky to touch the earth, Plumes of smoke rose hundreds of feet into the air, elegant fountains and twisting snow devils, shapes of veiled Arab women and ghost riders dissolving into white flame. The snow snakes writhing across the asphalt, straightened into rods. He was driving in a rushing river of cold, white-out foam. He could see nothing. Trod on the brake, the wind buffeting the car, a bitter, hard-flung dust hissing over metal and glass. The car shuddered. As suddenly as it had risen, the wind dropped and the road was clear. He could see a long, empty mile. How do you know when there's enough of anything? What trips the lever that snaps up the stop sign? What electrical currents fizz and crackle in the brain to shape the decision to quit a place? He had listened to her damn story, and the dice had rolled. Shh, you guys. Shh. For years, he believed he had left without hard reason and suffered for it. But he'd learned from television nature programs that it had been time for him to find his own territory and his own woman. How many women were out there? He had married 3 or 4 of them and sampled plenty. With the lapping subtlety of incoming tide, the shape of the ranch began to gather in his mind. He could recall the intimate fences he'd made, taut wire and perfect corners, the draws and rock outcrops, the watercourse valley steepening cliffs like bones with shreds of meat on them, rising, and the stream plunging suddenly underground, disappearing into subterranean darkness of blind fish, shooting out of the mountain 10 miles west on a neighbor's place, but leaving their ranch, some badland red country as dry as a cracker, steep canyons with high caves, suited to lions. He and Rollo had shot too early in the winter, close to the overhang with the painted vulvas. There were good caves up there from a lion's point of view. He traveled against curdled sky. In the last 60 miles, the snow began again. He climbed out of Buffalo, pallid flakes, as distant from each other as galaxies flew past, then more, and in 10 minutes he was crawling at 20 miles an hour. The windshield wipers thumping like a stick dragged down the stairs. The light was falling out of the day when he reached the pass, its blunt mountains lost in snow, the greasy hairpin turns ahead. He drove slowly and steadily. In a low gear, he had not forgotten how to drive a winter mountain. But the wind was up again, rocking and slapping the car, blotting out all but whipping snow, and he was sweating with the anxiety of keeping to the road. Dizzy with the altitude, 12 more miles, sliding and buffeted before he reached 10 Sleep, where streetlights glowed in revolving circles like Van Gogh's sun. There had not been electricity when he left the place. In those days, there were 17 black, lightless miles between the town and the ranch, and now the long arch of years compressed into that distance. His headlights picked up a sign. 20 miles to down under Wyoming. Emus and bison leered above the letters. He turned onto the snowy road marked with a single set of tracks, faint but still discernible. The heater fan whirring, the radio silent. All beyond the headlights blurred, yet everything was as it had been. The shape of the road achingly familiar. Sentinel rocks looming as they had in his youth. There was an eerie dream quality in seeing the deserted farrier place leaning east as it had leaned 60 years ago. The Banner Ranch gate, where the companionable tracks he had been following turned off, the gate ghostly in the snow, but still flying its wrought iron flag unmarked by the injuries of weather. And the taut 5-strand fences and dim shifting forms of cattle. Next would come the road to their ranch, a left-hand turn just over the crest of a rise. He was running now on the unmarked road through great darkness. Winking at Rollo, the girlfriend said, "Yes?" She had said, "Yes, sir. Tin Head eats half his dinner, then he has to take a little nap. After a while, he wakes up again, goes outside, stretching his arms and yawning, says, 'Guess I'll finish skinning out that steer.' But the steer ain't there. It's gone. Only the tongue laying on the ground, all covered with dirt and straw, and the tub of blood, and the dog licking at it. It was her voice that drew you in, that low, twangy voice. Wouldn't matter if she was saying the alphabet. What you heard was the rustle of hay. She could make you smell the smoke from an unlit fire. Howie could not recognize the turnoff to the ranch. It was so clear and sharp in his mind, the dusty crimp of the corner, the low section where the snow drifted, the run where willows slapped the side of the truck. He went a mile watching for it, but the turn didn't come up. Then watched for the Bob Kitchen place 2 miles beyond, but the distance unrolled. There was nothing. He made a 3-point turn and backtracked. Rollo must have given up the old entrance road, for it wasn't there. The kitchen place was gone to fire or wind. If he didn't find the turn, it was no great loss. Back to 10 sleep and scout a motel, but he hated to quit when he was close enough to spit. Hated to retrace black miles on a bad night when he was maybe 20 minutes away from the ranch. He drove very slowly, following his tracks, and the ranch entrance appeared on the right, although the gate was gone. The sign down. That was why he'd missed it. That and a clump of sagebrush that obscured the gap. He turned in, feeling a little triumph. But the road under the snow was rough and got rougher until he was bucking along over boulders and slanted rock and knew wherever he was, it was not right. He couldn't turn around on the narrow track and began backing gingerly, the window down, craning his stiff neck, staring into the redness cast by the taillights. The car's right rear tire rolled up over a boulder, sank, and slid into a quaggy hole. The tire spun in the snow, but he got no purchase. "I'll sit here," he said aloud. "I'll sit here until it's light, and then walk down to the Banner place and ask for a cup of coffee. I'll be cold, but I won't freeze to death." It played like a joke the way he imagined it, with Bob Banner opening the door and saying, "Why, it's Marrow." come on in and have some Java and a hot biscuit. Before he remembered that Bob Banner would have to be 120 years old to play that role. He was maybe 3 miles from Banner's gate, and the Banner Ranch house was another 7 miles beyond the gate. Say a 10-mile hike at altitude in a snowstorm. On the other hand, he had a half tank of gas. He could run the car for a while, then turn it off, start it again all through the night. It was bad luck, but that's all. The trick was patience. He dozed half an hour in the wind-rocked car, woke shivering and cramped. He wanted to lie down. He thought perhaps he could put a flat rock under the goddamn tire. Never say die, he said, feeling around the passenger side floor for a flashlight in his emergency bag, then remembered the wrecked car towed away, the flares, and car phone, and AAA card, and flashlight, and matches and candle, and power bars, and bottle of water still in it. And probably now in the damn tow driver's damn wife's car. He might get a good enough look anyway in the snow-reflected light. He put on his gloves and the heavy overcoat, got out and locked the car, sidled around to the rear, bent down. The taillights lit the snow beneath the car like a fresh blood stain. There was a cradle-sized depression eaten out by the spinning tire. 2 or 3 flat ones might get him out, or small round ones. He was not going to insist on the perfect stone. The wind tore at him. The snow was certainly drifting up. He began to shuffle on the road, feeling with his feet for rocks he could move. The car's even, throbbing, promising motion and escape. The wind was sharp and his ears ached. His wool cap was in the damn emergency bag. My lord, she continued, Tinhead is just startled to pieces when he doesn't see that steer. He thinks somebody, some neighbor, don't like him, plenty of them, come and stole it. He looks around for tire marks or footprints, but there's nothing except old cow tracks. He puts his hand to his eyes and stares away. Nothing in the north, the south, the east, but way over there in the west, on the side of the mountain, he sees something moving, stiff and slow, stumbling along. It looks raw, and it's got something bunchy and wet hanging down over its hindquarters. Yeah, it was the steer, never making no sound. And just then it stops and it looks back. And in the distance, Tinhead can see the raw meat of the head and the shoulder muscles and the empty mouth with no tongue, open wide, and its red eyes glaring at him. Pure, teetotal hate like arrows coming at him, and he knows he is done for. And all of his kids and their kids is done for. And that his wife is done for, and that every one of her blue dishes has got to break, and that the dog that licked the blood is done for, and the house where they lived has to blow away or burn up, and every fly or mouse in it. There was a silence, and she added, "That's it." And it all went against him, too. "That's it," said Rollo. That's all there is to it. Yet he knew he was on the ranch. He felt it, and he knew this road too. It was not the main ranch road, but some lower entrance he could not quite recollect that cut in below the river. Now he remembered that the main entrance gate was on the side road that branched off well before the banner place. He found a good stone, another, wondering what track this could be. The map of the ranch in his memory was not as bright now, but scuffed and obliterated, though trodden. The remembered gates collapsed, fences wavered, while the badland features swelled into massive prominence. The cliffs bulged into the sky, lions snarled, the river corkscrewed through a stone hole at a tremendous rate, and boulders cascaded from the heights. Beyond the barbed wire, something moved. He grasped the car door handle. It was locked. Inside, by the dashboard glow, he could see the gleam of the keys in the ignition where he'd left them to keep the car running. It was almost funny. He picked up a big two-handed rock and smashed it on the driver's side window, slipped his arm in through the hole into the delicious warmth of the car, a contortionist reach twisting behind the steering wheel and down, and had he not kept limber with exercise and green leafy vegetables, he could have never reached the keys. His fingers grazed and then grasped the keys, and he had them. This is how they sort the men out from the boys, he said aloud. As his fingers closed on the keys, he glanced at the passenger door. The lock button stood high. And even had it been locked as well, why had he strained to reach the keys when he only had to lift the lock button on the driver's side? Cursing, he pulled out the rubber floor mats and arranged them over the stones, stumbled around the car once more. He was dizzy, tremendously thirsty and hungry, opened his mouth to the snowflakes. He had eaten nothing for 2 days but the burned eggs that morning. He could eat a dozen burned eggs now. The snow roared through the broken window. He put the car in reverse and slowly trod the gas. The car lurched and steadied in the track, and once more he was twisting his neck, backing in the track and the red glare. 20 feet, 30, but slipping and spinning. There was too much snow. He was backing up an incline that had seemed level on the way in, but showed itself now as a remorselessly long hill, studded with rocks and deep in snow. His incoming tracks twisted like rope. He forced out another 20 feet, spinning his tires until they smoked, and the rear wheels slewed sideways off the track and into a 2-foot ditch. The engine died, and that was it. It was almost a relief to have reached this point where the celestial fingernails were poised to nip his thread. He dismissed the 10-mile distance to the banner place. It might not be that far, or maybe they had pulled the ranch closer to the main road. A truck might come by, shoes slipping, coat buttoned awry. He might find the mythical Grand Hotel in the sagebrush. On the main road, his tire tracks showed as a faint pattern in the pearly apricot light from the risen moon, winking behind roiling clouds of snow. His blurred shadow strengthened wherever the wind eased. Then the violent country showed itself, the cliffs rearing at the moon, the snow smoking off the prairie like steam, the white flank of the ranch slashed with fence cuts, the sagebrush glittering, and along the creek, black tangles of willow bunched like dead hair. There were cattle in the field beside the road, their plumed breaths catching the moony glow like comic strip dialogue balloons. He walked against the wind, his shoes filled with snow, feeling as easy to tear as a man cut from paper. As he walked, he noticed one of the herd inside the fence was keeping pace with him. He walked more slowly, and the animal lagged. He stopped and turned. It stopped as well, huffing vapor. Regarding him, a strip of snow on its back like a linen runner. It tossed its head, and in the howling, wintry light, he saw he'd been wrong again. And that the half-skinned steer's red eye had been watching him all this time. There you are. You got some spurs, don't you? Yeah. Captain Chaos.